right, Central, welcome to our final week of the Strengths-Based Culture series. If we haven't met yet, I'm Cameron. I'm joined by Marla Lobley, who is the head of our Strengths-Based Initiative Vision Team, and then Blake Earnhardt, who is the youth minister here at Central. So what we're going to do today is we opened it up for questions, and we got a couple, and so we're going to dive into those questions and hopefully find some answers, and if not, we'll at least keep the conversation alive. So I have Blake here to kind of be our, I guess, moderator is probably not a good word, maybe facilitator.
Q&A czar.
Q&A czar.
Yeah.
Emperor of Zoom.
Yes.
So I'm going to hand it over to him.
All right. This is exciting. Okay, first question that I have for the two of you wonderful human beings. What is the line between being confident in my strengths and bragging about my strengths? Is it wrong to admit my strengths to others, specifically as a woman?
I'm probably not the one to answer that question, so
I'll toss that one to you, Marla.
Okay. Well, usually, so I want to make a difference between bragging about your strengths and like claiming your strengths. So I see claiming your strengths as you're in a group of people, there's a task that needs done, and you say, oh, I'm good at this, I can do that. To me, that's a very selfless thing, because one, you're signing up for more work, and so that's not being prideful. But I don't see that as bragging. To volunteer and speak up and kind of lean in, I think, is another word you can use to describe that. So to own your strengths and know what you're good at, and then to express that to others when there's a need where your strengths can help others. Bragging about your strengths might be kind of a more selfish intention. So I think that's how I would define the line, is are you bringing up your strengths for selfish purposes, or are you bringing them up because you're going to help people with them?
Yeah, that's great. Cameron, do you have any thoughts on the distinction there between, because I love what you said there, Marla, about when you're offering your strengths, it's adding work to something that you weren't previously doing. And so do you have anything to add to that, Cameron?
Yeah, I think I would say like at some point there's a humility in saying like, I know my motives, and no matter how those motives are perceived, like I'm still going to lean into them. And sometimes we think we're being humble by changing our actions to reflect what others might think about us. But really the humble thing would be to say like, even if this is going to lead to other people thinking that I'm bragging or being arrogant, I know that my motives here are actually to use who God created me to be. And sometimes you're just going to have to be okay with like how others perceive you. And I think like for me, just like the realization like that I'm the one who has to be me. And if I believe that like all humans are made in the image of God, it would be a disservice to God for me to not fully lean into like who he created me to be. I think that'd be the only thing I would maybe expound on with that.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, when people, well, you know, like I love the idea of not really caring what someone else thinks, right? I love the idea of that. It's hard to put that into practice all the time. But it likely, probably, if somebody did have something to say about you being really excited about using your strengths, it would stem from some kind of something that they got going on. It really has nothing to do with you in the first place, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So
for sure,
those are great answers. This is really easy. Thanks, guys. Okay, I'm going to go on to question 2. What if my strengths don't fit anywhere at Central? And there's a follow-up, but it's kind of obvious answer. So I'll throw that one to you first, Marla. What if my strengths don't fit anywhere at Central? I've been doing this strengths-driven culture series all summer long on Wednesday nights. I've learned my strengths. I'm very familiar with the terminology and how this affects me as a person, my personality, but I don't see anywhere at Central that my strengths can be used.
Okay, so I would say one, before you totally like rule yourself out and that you don't fit at Central, to talk to someone else and see where do they see that your strengths could fit in. One example could be like you're really good at social media and you don't see how that relates to church at all. But really, our church has social media accounts. We need people posting and people who are really good at social media, and that is a gift that not everyone has.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think especially if you are just beginning to learn about your strengths and your personality, to get an outside perspective and see maybe there's things that they can see that you don't see. And then the second thing is, if it truly is that there's nothing at Central that maximizes your strengths or where your strengths can be used, which I kind of doubt that that's the case, but if that's really true, then Central we can grow. We need to become a place where it's a place for everybody, and that the church can grow in kind of an infinite number of directions to do that.
Awesome. Absolutely. Cameron, good luck trying to add anything to that, but I'll throw it to you anyways.
Yeah. Can you repeat the question just so I can kind of...
Yes. What if my strengths don't fit anywhere at Central? Should I stay?
I think if I mean, yeah, Marla just said like we want to grow, and that's why we're doing this. We realize that we're not using everybody's strengths. And so it's easy to look and say like, oh, my strengths aren't being used anywhere at Central, so that must mean my strengths don't belong here. But that probably means that we have a major hole that we're looking to fill, and we need you for that. And I think just, I'm big on the idea that people know their strengths better than we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you feel like your strengths don't fit anywhere at Central, I guess my next follow-up would be like, have you communicated your strengths to Central?
Yeah.
And if you haven't, that's like a good step.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think there is something to be said about, the leadership at the church recognizing that this person is really good at this. I'm going to initiate that conversation, but there's also initiative that needs to happen, I think, too, from our congregation. And it's just been really cool to see, there's been multiple people who have kind of reached out throughout this whole series and just said, hey, these are my strengths. Help me see where I can be used, right? Help me see where I can use my strengths in this. And so that's been really encouraging. And so I think it's a little bit of both leadership from congregation. Yeah. All right. Question number 3. We're on a tiny bit of a time crunch, but we got 2 more questions left. This is really awesome. Thank you guys. Question 3.
Real quick, Blake, did you say there was a part 2 to that question?
Well, the second follow-up is should I stay?
Oh, okay.
And I would hope that the answer to that is yes, because there's taking initiative to reach out. That's our hope as the leadership of the church is that you would take initiative to reach out to us and say, hey, these are my strengths. Help me better understand where I can fit in.
Can I speak to that
Please.
A little bit? Just kind of, because I think I would say 2 things to that. And the first thing would be like, if you feel like you're within something and you're not contributing the most of yourself, there's absolutely no shame in walking away. into something new. And I think like churches have not done a good job of letting people know like, hey, there's absolutely no shame of going where you best contribute.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is there's never been, as far as I know, a better time to be at Central and be diverse in your strengths.
Yeah.
Like this is the first time that I know of that we've made like a real effort in saying that we want everybody to be utilized. And so if you are going to stick around, like, I think the first side is that like, there's no shame in saying, hey, I can't contribute here and I want to go where I contribute. The flip side of that is if you're here and you're saying like, I'm going to be an Ada long term, there's never been a better time to stay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. Sorry, cool. I didn't mean to derail.
No, that's great. That's perfect. I'm glad you followed up. I'm a terrible moderator. Or I'm a terrible Q&A czar. Q&A czar. I can't even. All right, question number 3. Moving on. How do I identify other people's strengths? Marlo, what would you say to that?
Yeah, Cameron mentioned as part of his answer to the last question that people know their own strengths best. And I find that even like with your spouse, it's really hard for you to identify their strengths. So I don't know that that's the purpose as much as just encouraging people when you notice something that maybe they're not seeing about themselves. Or maybe I know Cameron talked to one student who competition was one of his strengths, and he had always been told that was a bad thing and until he took Strengths Quest. And so maybe if you have you see someone who is competitive, maybe you can encourage them and tell them how you see them using that in a good way, because they may not hear that very often. So I don't know that you have to identify someone else's strengths, but you can encourage them when you see them doing something, whether it's technically one of their strengths or not.
Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. Cameron?
I mean, that's 100% what I would have said. It's just, I think that I think that's big. If you can like really learn to believe that people know their strengths better than you do and be curious. I think one of my mentors did something cool for me last week when he was explaining the idea of vision. And at first he stood in front of me and just pointed out like what he saw. Like he was like, I see trees, I see flowers, like I see a lake. And he goes, and that's a bad way of leading vision, Cameron. And then he stood behind me and just said, what do you see? And like allowed me to find my own vision. And I think that's the difference between like telling people what I see and asking them, what do you see in yourself? And if I can believe that what they see in themselves is more true, then I think I'm going to get more out of their strengths.
And I think if you are in one of those like mentoring type relationships and you're the mentor, there's a lot of information about coaching online. A lot of it comes from the business world actually. But just look up coaching. There's like some key aspects about coaching where you are asking questions. The coach talks like 20% of the time, and the other person talks like 80% of the time. So that's it. And then coaching assumes that the person you are coaching knows the most about their own situation and can make the best decision. And so you end up where you never offer advice. You might say, well, what if you tried this? And the person kind of comes up with their own solutions with you coaching them into it.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And we are down to our final question of the evening. This has been fantastic. Thank you guys so much for this. Question number 4, Marlo Lobley, do strengths change?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I love about Strengths Quest in comparison to other personality tests is that usually your personality stays the same, but strengths really kind of gears your mind towards growth and that they can change. I took the Strengths Quest for the first time as a freshman in college, and they were very different. Like, for example, belief was one of my top strengths at that point in my life because I was out on my own for this first time trying to make a lot of decisions. And so I was relying on belief to guide me through those decisions. Now that I am in a professional position in the workplace for about 3 years, I guess, one of my main strengths is achiever because I'm in a position where I just need to get a lot of stuff done. And so I think I always had achiever and that I still have belief, but since I'm not practicing belief as much now because I have already made a lot of those decisions, then it doesn't show up in the assessment. And the same way, achiever didn't show up in college because that wasn't the most important thing for me to be practicing and doing at that time.
Yeah, cool. Cameron?
Yeah, it's really cool hearing Marla's story on that because mine was like really similar. Of like I took StrengthsFinder the first time when I was 20, I think, and had focus and maximizer in my top themes. And now my 5 themes are futuristic, strategic. Sorry, you're gonna have to edit that part. I got mixed up. All right, now my top 5 are futuristic, strategic, communication, activators. Against focus was in place of futuristic, and maximizer was in place of activator when I first took it. And the only thing that really changed between 20 and then the ticket, which was when I was 28 years old, was that I went through like pretty severe trauma. And I think like going through that trauma and like the more we study like the mind and human potential, the more we realize that like post-traumatic growth is just as possible as post-traumatic stress. And I think like intentionally choosing to grow actually grew those strengths within me to where like focus almost like became futuristic and because it saw the bigger picture, and maximizer became activator to where I wasn't just maximizing my time, but I was actually starting new initiatives. And so I think like the question of change is easy to get caught up on. I think Marla hit it really well. It's more growth and expansion than it is actual change. Like I think we become more of who we can be as we like focus on our strengths.
I think it's also interesting. It's an interesting way to learn more about yourself. Like after you have a big life change, like maybe after you get married or have a child or change jobs, and to take Strengths Quest again after you've been in that position for a while and see what parts of yourself are you exercising all the time in this new role. And you can learn a lot about yourself that feeds into your growth.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Well, thank you so much for your amazing answers. Hey, somebody turn the lights off. It's time to go home.
Motion sensor, yep.
That is perfect timing. That is perfect timing. All right. Well, thank you guys. Thank you so much, Cameron, for putting this together all summer. For Marla, your amazing contributions and all the help that you put into this series. And I hope that we will continue. And if you haven't taken the strengths assessment yet, please do. And we'll be here to give you any resources that you're going to need. And I hope that you will spend some serious time getting to know your strengths, because there's lots of places for you to contribute. And we want you serving in our congregation. So thank you again. And we are signing off, and we will see you next week. Or Ben will see you next week. I think Ben is starting a new series next Wednesday. So we will see you then.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Adios.
Thank you.